Unfinished Symphony by V.C. Andrews. The New York City skyline took my breath away. As Holly and I approached the sparkling city, I reflected on the rush of events that had brought me all this way. Too excited to rest, yet too tired to talk with Holly, I decided to write Alice Morgan a thank you for sending the picture that captured me into this odyssey, this journey to find my past. Dear Alice, thank you for sending me the clothing catalog with the picture of the model who looked just like my mother. Kenneth and I agreed with you, and Kenneth contacted me, a catalog company that gave him the name of the model, Gina Simon, and her address. And you'll never guess where I'm headed right this minute while I write this letter. Los Angeles, Hollywood. Well, actually, I'm in New York City now, driving through it at least, and I just passed the Empire State Building. Kenneth's friend Holly offered to drive me to New York, and then Holly's sister Dorothy and her husband Peter have volunteered to let me stay with them in Beverly Hills. Can you believe it? I'm a little scared to be traveling so far on a dream. What if this Gina Simon just turns out to be a woman that looks just like Mommy? Or even worse, what if she is my mother? What does that mean? Then who's buried in the grave in Providencetown? And why hasn't she let me know she's okay? And that she really didn't die in that car crash. Maybe she's sick and lost her memory. If Mommy has amnesia, she might need me now more than ever. I just have to go, and I have to have the answer to all these questions. You would think that with all this excitement and finding a clue about my mother, I would be happier. But leaving Providencetown almost broke my heart. I know when I last wrote you that I was lonely and Grandma Olivia was giving me a hard time, and certainly that hasn't changed, but Carrie and I have grown so close, and it's painful to leave him. And to watch little May cry when she waved goodbye was just awful. They really have become like family to me, and Carrie, of course, has become much more. I'll have to tell you about it when we talk. Well, Alice, I hope I have news for you soon, and I hope you're enjoying life back in Sewell. I really do miss West Virginia, and you, of course. Say hi to everyone at school and keep your fingers crossed. Love, Melanie. Chapter 1. A Glimpse into the Future. Holly's crystal shop looked small inside because every available space was utilized. The air reeked of incense, and there was some kind of Far Eastern music playing. Large crystals, all shiny and jagged, stood on the antique tables at the center of the shop, and a tall oak bookshelf lined on the side walls. I turned my gaze to the books alongside me and noticed that the shelves were filled with titles describing meditation practices, astrology, faith healing, the afterlife, paraphysical wonders, whatever they were. Along at the back wall was a long glass case crowded with birthstones as well as amethyst, blue topaz, citrine, garnet, and other minerals set in earrings. On the shelves behind the glass were boxes of incense teas, tarot cards, herbal medicines. The ceiling was covered with charts of constellations, along with posters explaining the powers of various stones. Above the cash register, framed in flowers, was a photograph of a man Holly said was a Buddhist guru who had taught her about meditation. A curtain, multicolored beads hung on the doorway and led to the rooms in the back of the shop. We'd only been in the shop a few moments when a young man in a wheelchair, whom I knew had to be Billy Maxwell, parted the curtain and appeared. He had silky ebony hair that reached his shoulders and framed his face, a face that had an angelic glow because of his rich, almost alabaster complexion. As soon as he saw us, his light green eyes brightened and his gentle smile appeared on his face. Perhaps because of his disability and dependence on his arms and shoulders, his upper body was firm and muscular. He wore a pair of dark jeans and white socks and sneakers. There was a large, round gem in gold casing dangling on a gold chain around his neck. "Hi, Billy," Holly said as he wheeled himself closer, his eyes fixed on me. "Hi, you got here earlier than I expected. How was your trip?" he asked her, while still concentrating on me. "Good. This is Melanie." "Pleased to meet you," Billy said and extended his hand. He had long, soft fingers, a palm that was warm against mine. "Hi," I said. There seemed to be a rich peacefulness in his face, a calmness that helped me feel at home. "So, you're on a big journey," he said, sitting back. "Yes," I answered. The Chinese say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And you've taken that single step. That's usually the hardest, he added. Now the momentum will take over and carry you where you have to go. I nodded and glanced at Holly, not sure what to say. She laughed. "You'll get some good advice here, Melanie. Billy's the best tour guide in our galaxy." Billy smiled but kept his eyes on me. It was strange having him look at me so intently, but I didn't feel intimidated or self-conscious. I felt his sincerity, his concern, and it was as if he and I had known each other for years instead of minutes. "What's been happening here?" Holly asked before we started to cross the shop. "Well, Mrs. Hardigan's daughter gave birth prematurely this morning, but the baby's doing well." She stopped to thank us for the smoky quartz. It really helped her daughter get through the crisis. "And Mr. Brule was here this morning to tell you that the Varus site helped him recall his past life. He had vivid details to share." "Past life?" I asked. "Yes, he saw himself in England in the mid-19th century. He said he was a bookkeeper, which made sense to him, but he's an accountant now." "You mean you believe we had former lives?" I asked, looking from him to Holly, then back to him. "Yes," Billy said, smiling. "I have no doubt." "Well, for now, I have to concentrate on her present life," Holly said. "This way, honey." "I'm sorry I can't help you with your bags," Billy apologized. "We'll be fine," Holly replied. "See you in a few minutes." "Welcome again, Melanie, and don't worry. This is good energy surrounding you." His eyes grew small. "Things will work out for you," he said with confidence. It was as if he really could look into my future. "Thanks," I said. The door chimes rang and two elderly women entered the shop. While Billy attended to them, Holly led me through the curtain of beads to the living quarters in the rear of the shop. "Our rooms are right back here," she explained. I followed her through the doorway to the short hallway. There was a small living room on the right with a sofa and smaller settee, 2 easy chairs, and a glass table with 2 standing lamps. "This is Billy's bedroom," she nodded to the first door on the left. "It makes it easier for him to be closest to the shop." "I have the next room, and you can take this room across the hall," she said, opening the door. It was a very small room, with one window that opened on the rear of the building. There wasn't much to look at, just a driveway that provided access to garbage trucks and a small fenced area for someone's dog. The dog was in its doghouse at the moment, with just large black paws visible. The window had light brown cotton curtains and a window shade, a quarter of a moon star painted on it. There was a large bell-shaped mauve candle on the nightstand. The dark pine bed had light brown comforter and matching pillows. It looked comfortable. Actually, the room was cozy with its tan carpet and dark pink walls, lamp, rocking chair, table, and a matching dark pine dresser. A set of chimes dangled at the corner of the door, barely moving at the moment. "This room gets a lot of use," Holly explained. "Many people who belong to our network of friends pass through New York one way or another and stop over for a short visit. I know it's small, but It's fine, Holly, thank you. Why don't you just settle in? The bathroom's at the end of the hallway. Freshen up. I'll do the same and call my sister. Then we'll have some dinner. Billy does all the cooking, you know. Really? And he's quite the gourmet. I forgot what you told me about why he's in the wheelchair. Didn't you say he got shot? Mugged about 5 years ago, not far from here. He ran and the mugger shot him and shattered Billy's spinal cord. How horrible. But I'm glad you told me. I didn't want to say anything wrong. Don't worry about that. Billy's quite at peace with himself and his condition. Because of his spirituality, he pities more people than pity him. I can't think of a moment when he was depressed in the past few years. Anyone who comes in here feeling the least bit sorry for himself usually leaves feeling ashamed of his own self-pity after they talk to Billy. And he's a wonderful poet, published in many literary magazines. We'll get him to read you something later. Holly put her arm around my shoulders and squeezed. Just like Billy said, everything's going to turn out fine, Melanie. I nodded. The discoveries, the quick decisions to make the journey and ride to New York was suddenly filling me with a deep fatigue. I felt my body sink and my legs soften and my eyelids turn to lead. Take rest, Holly advised. As soon as she left me, I lay there and drooped my head on the pillow. A tinkle like the sound of the glass being jingled in a dishwasher tray woke me. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. The sun had gone down and the room was filled with shadows. Someone had come in while I was asleep and turned on the small lamp by the rocking chair. I sat up to grind the sleep out of my eyes. The window was slightly open and the breeze that passed through made the chimes from the ceiling tap, which solved the mystery of the sound. I heard the gentle knock at the door. Yes? Holly, dressed in one of her bright yellow dresses with a yellow and green headband, her silver crystal earrings dangling to her shoulders, poked her head through the open door. You've been sleeping quite a while. Getting hungry? Yes, I said. Good. I spoke with my sister Dorothy and everything is set. As soon as we know when your flight arrives, I'll call her and her driver will meet you at the airport. My friend is working on the ticket now and promises to call within the hour. Billy's been preparing a feast. Freshen up and come out when you're ready, she said. Thanks, Holly. You're welcome, sweetheart. Oh, she said before closing the door. I spoke to Kenneth. He sends his regard and best wishes. But I picked up a change in her tone. Was something wrong? He just sounded a bit down. Maybe he misses us. Misses you especially, she offered. He's probably working 20 hours a day. 20? More like 22, she said with a small laugh. Then she closed the door and I got up and opened the suitcase to pick out something to wear. After I washed up and changed, I went out to the kitchen. The aroma of the food was tantalizing and it made my stomach churn. Billy bent over the table, obviously built lower to accommodate him in his wheelchair, turned as I entered. Holly was in the shop with a customer. Hi, how are you doing? Billy asked. I feel better after a nap. It looks like I slept longer than I thought I would. Can I help? Everything's done, he said, nodding at the table. Holly will close the shop in about 10 minutes and we'll have dinner. Oh, let me light the candles, he said. I like to dim the room when we eat. It heightens the sense of the taste when you diminish the power of other senses. Did you know that? No. It's true, he said, laughing at my skepticism. Didn't you ever notice that food tastes better in the dark? Assuming it's good food, that is. He lit each candle and returned to work on the table. How long have you been cooking? Since I've been vegetarian. It just got a lot easier to cook for yourself, and besides, preparing food is an art and very self-satisfying. Most people today think it's an ordeal, but that's because they don't take pride in what they do. They don't look for the essence, the inner rewards. Life for them is full of burdens. They're never at ease, and they rarely enjoy their own accomplishments. Their days are full of stress and negative energy. He turned back to me. I don't mean to bore you with a lecture. Holly says once I get started, I'm like a clock that won't wind down. No, really, I don't mind, I said. Why are you a vegetarian? Billy paused in his food preparation and turned his chair so he could face me. I follow many Buddhist traditions and consider all animal life sacred, but other religious groups practice vegetarianism as well. I believe that the killing of animals is unnecessary and cruel and can conceivably lead to disregard for human life. It's also a healthier way to live. He smiled. Now, you think I'm some sort of kook, right? No, I said, but I know a lot of people in Cape Cod who would be unhappy if people stopped eating fish. Oh, well, something smells very good, I admitted. Tonight's menu, Billy announced, sitting up straighter in his chair. We'll begin with chilled okra yogurt soup, then an orange walnut romaine salad, followed by rice, carrot, mushroom, and pecan burgers on toasted 7-grain bread. For dessert, I've prepared a carob cake with carob ricotta icing, something special in celebration of your arrival, he added. My silence brought laughter to his lips. Don't know what you're don't know what you're in for, huh? He said. It sounds interesting, I said, and he laughed harder. What's going on here? Holly asked as she entered the room. I just described the menu to Melanie and she was speechless. Then she said it was interesting. How's that for diplomacy? Oh, don't worry, Melanie. You're in for a delightful surprise, Holly promised. Did you close up? Billy asked, and she nodded. Then let the feast begin, he declared, slapping his hands together. Once again, I asked to help, but Billy insisted that I was a guest of honor. Holly turned the lights down and took her seat. The soup was delicious and refreshing. The salad was very good, but I was most surprised by the vegetable burgers because they did resemble meat in their texture and even in their flavor. How do you do this? I asked, munching away. He has magic hands, Holly said. Billy asked questions about Cape Cod, my life there and the life before Sewell, West Virginia. He was a good listener, absorbing all the details. Occasionally, he and Holly exchanged a look that told me that they had discussed me in a situation at length. You have to realize, he said when I completed my explanation to why I was on this trip, that places change people. We react to our environment, to people around us, to the climate, especially the sort of energy force that's there. Even if this woman is your mother, she might be a stranger to you now than you would expect. I hope not, I said mournfully. Just be prepared, Billy advised. I don't know how to prepare for something like that. Maybe I can help you, he said, his eyes intense. The telephone rang and Holly spoke to the travel agent friend. When she hung up, she told me my flight was set for the day after tomorrow. It'll bring you into Los Angeles at about 11 a.m. Pacific time. I'll call Dorothy to give her the phone number and the time. My heart began to pound now that my plans were becoming reality. This time when Holly hung up, she shook her head. Dorothy will take you to some Beverly Hills restaurant for lunch, where you will eat a piece of celery and a cup full of pasta for $100, I'm sure, she said. Think of my sister as someone who has humored La La Land is just Disneyland for the rich and famous. Oh, now let her make her own conclusions, Holly, Billy said charitably. Who knows, she might enjoy that world. Not this down-to-earth girl. You listen to me, Melanie. Get in and get out. Find out what you have to find out, and if it isn't what you expected or what you want, put yourself on the next plane and come back here if you like, before you return to Cape Cod, Holly said. Also, ignore 99% of what my sister tells you and be skeptical about the other 10%. The phone rang again. Holly spoke to someone and then she hung up. She announced that she had to leave for a while. I have to go do an astrological reading for someone. It's way past due. I hate to leave you on your first night here, but she'll be fine, Billy said. Will you read her one of your poems? If she'd like, he replied, turning to me. Oh, yes, I said. But I insist that you let me help you clean up. No problem. I'm a gourmet cook, and all-around gourmet cooks let people help clean up. He and Holly laughed, and I smiled widely. I had been in New York only a few hours, but I felt more at home here than I felt at the homes of my so-called relatives and family. Maybe Billy was right. Maybe there was such thing as positive energy, and maybe it would give me enough to help me through the dark valleys. The question was, would I find any light at the end? After I straightened up the kitchen and put the dishes away, I stopped by the living room where Billy sat gazing at a notebook on his lap. Come in, he said. I was sitting here thinking about what I had written would be most appropriate for your circumstances, and it took me all the way back to my rebirth. Rebirth? He nodded and flicked some strands of hair from his eyes. He had a soft, angelic smile on his lips again. I never met anyone who seemed so at peace with himself. It reminded me of someone in a deep calm before a storm. Carrie called it Mother Nature's deception, claiming she had tricked us into believing that all was well before she sent the furies down around us. Yes, rebirth, for I was dead to so much before my death, he said. I was like most people, blind and deaf, confused by the clatter and noise, chasing material things, living on the lowest level and never hearing the song. The song? The spiritual song. The deep voice within us all. The voice that links us to every living and non-living thing. Even the man who shot me is part of this overall spiritual essence. And in that sense, we're all part of each other forever. Did they catch him? No, but that doesn't matter. He shot himself when he shot me. We're eternally tied together by the act. You mean you could forgive him for it, I asked. Of course. There's nothing to forgive. The negative energy that was in him is what must have driven him away. He was captured, a prisoner of that, just as I was captured for a while and made prisoner by the bullet that shattered my spine. How can you be so positive? I asked with astonishment. I was lying on my hospital bed feeling terribly sorry for myself, cataloging all the things I would no longer be able to do, regretting how much I would lose and wishing I would die, he explained, when suddenly Holly stopped by my bed, accompanied by her guru, an elderly man from India who had eyes like crystals themselves. It was part of their charity work to visit the infirm and give sick people hope. Right from the start, I felt something about him, some inner strength that he was able to share with me and instill in me. He taught me how to meditate and open the doors to my new self. I dedicated my first poem to him. He has since then gone back to India. That's a picture of him in the shop. After that, Holly came to me and offered me a job at her shop, and I agreed, and I've been here ever since. Let's see, he said, flipping the pages. Ah, yes, this was when I first began to write poems. I wasn't working here long, and I had read some poetry in the village newspaper. Want to hear it? Very much, please. He stared at the pages for a long silent moment, then in a very soft, low voice read, I had come from the end of daylight and faced the doorway of darkness, but when I touched my face, I realized my eyes were closed and my skin was cold. All that I thought I loved and needed was gone, and I was naked, shivering in misery. They were measuring me for a coffin. Suddenly I heard a voice calling from within myself. I turned my eyes around to look back, to look down, to look deep. I saw a single candle. It drew me closer until I could reach out and put my fingers in the flame. Slowly, meticulously, I burned away my dead body, and when it was gone, I was no longer naked. He looked up slowly. I'm not sure I understand. I had to crawl out of my old, now crippled body, burn it away because it literally imprisoned me. Once I found my inner light, the true spirituality, I was able to go beyond the physical body and reach a higher place. Someday you will too. Everything you love and think looks lost. You're on a search because you feel naked without meaning or hope. But you'll see that you have everything you need inside you, and you just have to take a single step in any direction. I said nothing. You've got that look in your eyes again. You think I'm a kook again. No, I said, laughing. Actually, I hope what you say is true. Is that why Holly called you the best guide in the galaxy? Yes, he said with a laugh. All right, enough lessons for one evening. Want to go for a walk? A walk? He laughed at my surprise. Well, you'll walk and push me along, he said. Oh, sure, I said, hoping I hadn't insulted him with my astonishment. It's pretty warm out. You don't need a jacket. Without any hesitation, he turned his chair around and wheeled himself out of the living room and through the kitchen into the shop. I almost had to run to keep up. While we paused outside the door for him to lock it, and then he asked me to push him up the street. At the corner, we crossed and went down another street and past some shops. When we reached NYU campus, Billy had me pause to listen to some speakers. Further down, a group of young men sang spiritual songs a cappella. They were very good too, and they had a basket for contributions. What do you think? Billy asked me as we walked down the sidewalk past the homeless people asking for handouts. Now I understand why Holly calls New York a carnival of life. Billy pointed to the corner. This is where it happened. I was running in that direction. He nodded to the left. It was about 2 a.m, and I was a student here, you know. Oh, does that bother you to come here? No, it intrigues me. I can give you this advice, Melanie Logan, he said in a deeper, darker voice that made my spine tingle. Seize the moment. Confront the face of that which frightens you and search until you find a way out. Don't let anything shut you up inside yourself. Wherever you go, whatever you see, when you are most afraid, think of this corner. Think of those shadows and of me sitting here staring back through time at myself, at the gunman, and the sound of the pistol and myself folding on the sidewalk then, suddenly rising out of myself and standing taller than before. He reached out and took my hand, as if he felt the courage and spiritual strength moved into me. I smiled. Thanks, Billy. Thank yourself. Cherish yourself and don't let anyone make you feel small. He sat back, suddenly looked exhausted, as if he spent all his energy on me. Maybe we should go back now, I suggested. He nodded. Holly wasn't back when by the time we arrived. Can I help you with anything? I asked. I'll be fine, he said, smiling. Thank you. Billy wheeled himself down the corridor to the bathroom, then to his room. I prepared myself for bed. As he went by to go to his room, he paused at my door. Good night, Melanie. Good night, Billy, I called. He wheeled to the room, and I marveled at how cheerful and how well he had driven the shadows of loneliness from his door. I wasn't in my room for 5 minutes before those shadows began closing in on me. Here I was in a strange place away from anyone who loved me, feeling like a wanderer who had lost their sense of direction and no longer knew her way home. From what well of faith did Billy Maxwell draw so much strength? I lie in the dark thinking about Carrie. Thinking about him made me feel better. I closed my eyes and concentrated on the memory and the sound of the ocean. As soon as the shadows of loneliness sunk back, sleep like a tide washed over me. I was drifting out, and when I woke up the next morning, I was embarrassed at how late I slept. Holly and Billy had already opened the shop and were dealing with customers. I'm sorry I slept so late. That's all right, honey, Holly said. You must have been exhausted. Billy told me the two of you went for a walk, she added. I guess all the excitement of being in New York City tired me out. I'll get her some breakfast, Billy called and headed for the kitchen. I hate being so much trouble. You're not trouble. After we had breakfast, we'll go get the airline tickets, Holly said. Then I'd like to show you some of New York. What would you like to see the most? I don't know. My mind reeled with possibilities, the things and places I had only read about, and Alice and I had spoken of Sewell, and two of us had planned to take a trip together. What had once been a childhood fantasy was now a reality for me. I guess I'd like to see the Empire State Building and Broadway and the Statue of Liberty and the Museum of Natural History. And there's only one day, Holly said, laughing. I'll show her most of that, Billy called from the kitchen. Got some fruit, a bowl of multigrain cereal, and juice and coffee waiting here for you, Melanie. You'll show me, I asked, not hiding my astonishment. He and Holly looked at each other, then laughed. Billy gets around as well as anyone, Holly said. He has a van with a lift that's specially engineered steering wheel. A gift from my parents, he said, and I thought how strange that he had never mentioned them before. I can't take you away from the shop. What do you mean? I'm due a vacation anyway, aren't I, Holly? More than one, Holly replied. Better eat breakfast so you could get started, Holly said. Go on, she urged. Stop being a worrywart. I laughed and went to have my breakfast. Afterward, Holly and I drove to the travel agency where her friend worked, and I picked up my airline tickets. Having them hand me in my hand with the itinerary spelled it out before me, and I was suddenly frightened. Would I really get on a plane tomorrow and fly across the country to stay with people I didn't know? Billy had his van in the front of the shop when we returned. He showed me how the lift worked, and then he took his place in the driver's seat. Holly waved goodbye, and Billy was looking excited as I was. It was fun to see the familiar things through virgin eyes, he explained. It helps one appreciate what one has more. Seeing the Empire State Building in the distance was one thing, but to ride right up to it and look at it was another. You want to go up, Billy asked. Can we? Of course. I'll pull into the parking garage and we'll take the elevator. It's a beautiful day for it. We'll probably see into Canada. Will we? No, he said, laughing. You probably think I'm a country bumpkin, I said, grimacing. Absolutely not. And what if you were? It would be refreshing and honest, he replied. Billy, could you turn anything negative to a positive, I thought? How could anyone be so perfect? Billy moved about the city as if it were just a small town no bigger than Sewell. The hordes of people and the veritable seas of people and faces up and down the sidewalks, the legions of cars, the noise and the commotion seemed not to exist. He wheeled himself around, barely noticing any of it. The elevator ride to the observation deck of the Empire State Building was the most exciting I'd ever taken. And when we stepped out and over to the railing, I thought that we were literally on top of the world. I squealed with amazement. Billy laughed and gave me some change for the telescope through which I could see the Hudson River and clear across to New Jersey. Afterward, we drove up to Broadway and past all the theater marquees and great electric signs and through Times Square, a place I'd only seen on television and read in books. My heart pounded with excitement, and I couldn't wait to write Alice. And Billy decided that we should have lunch in the world-famous Chinatown, where he could get his favorite vegetable lo mein. While we're there, he bought a beautiful hand-painted fan. After lunch, we went to the Statue of Liberty. The sky was still mostly blue, and there was a warm breeze from the New York harbor. When we returned to shore, I realized Billy was more tired than he pretended, and I told him it was time to go back to the shop, claiming I was tired myself. I wasn't. New York had a way of injecting its energy into me. The panorama of people and things to do was mesmerizing and helped me forget about worries and troubles. Back at the shop, all three of us sat and had tea while I ranted about the things we'd seen. Afterward, Billy went into his room to meditate, and Holly and I took care of the customers. When Billy emerged from his room, he looked revived. Once again, I offered to help him with dinner, but he told me I was the guest and to enjoy the preparations. He's a wonderful person. I'm happy he became my partner. He said his parents gave him the van, but he didn't mention any more about his family to me. Where are they? Holly grimaced. They live upstate, and they're quite happy he's not there too. They don't accept his way of life now? His father calls him a hippie. Oh, how sad. Billy isn't happy about it, but he's resigned and he accepts it. Does he have brothers and sisters? An older brother, an attorney. He sees him whenever he comes to New York, or I should say once in a while when he comes to New York. I don't think he calls every time. He wanted Billy to go there and live with their parents, but Billy won't be treated like some handicapped person, as you probably already noticed. He's amazing, I said, inspirational. Holly nodded, then she turned a bit serious. I've been working on your charts, Melanie, she said. Now that I know more about you and the events and can pinpoint things, I can get a clearer picture. And? I don't think you're going to find what you want, she said gently. Maybe you should turn around and return to the life that you have and the people you know you can count on. It was a clap of thunder above my head. I sucked in my breath and smiled. You know I can't, I said softly, and she nodded. But after being with Billy and learning from him, I'm not as afraid as I was. That's good. I'm very grateful for you and what you've done for me. I don't know if I would have ever had the courage to do this if it weren't for you, Holly. Thank you. She didn't smile. I hope I've done the right thing, she said. I could only wonder what she saw in the stars that made her doubt it. It's better, I thought, not to ask.